All right. We are live.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to introduce you to Kimberly Hunt. She's a professional editor and owner of Revision Division. Thank you for joining me, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for doing this, Annie. I'm so excited and I can't wait to talk to everybody about book editing.
I can't wait either. I'm so excited. So before we go into the questions, I wanted to talk about how Kimberly and I met. So we met on Critique Match, and she beta read my novel, and she did a phenomenal job. And I just couldn't get her out of my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, she did so great. And then I started querying, and an agent asked me for my full manuscript, and she said, would you be willing to have it edited? And I said, oh, yeah, definitely. If you're telling me you want me edited, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I contacted Kimberly again, and I decided to do her service of a manuscript evaluation. And she did excellent again. And I went back to that agent, and the agent signed me. So I am a firm believer in editing. So thank you, Kimberly.
No, thank you for the kind words and the support. I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed reading your novel and how it was not work for me. I don't know how many times I messaged you or emailed you and said, are you spying on me? Are you writing my life? So you're an excellent, talented author, and I'm happy to have been just a small part in your process.
Oh, thank you.
So if I could just let people joining know that they can ask their questions in the comments, and we'll probably save them for the end. We'll let Annie ask her questions first, and anything we don't get to, we can follow up if you provide emails, and that way we can make sure that we address all the questions and help as much as we can.
Yes, thank you everybody for being here. I'm looking forward to your questions. So I'm going to just dive in with a few I have. So when I hired Kimberly, I did a manuscript evaluation, but there are different types of editing. And I would like if Kimberly could just go through and tell us what the different types are.
Yes, definitely, because it's not, the industry is not standardized. So while there are professional organizations out there that try to help explain, what to expect, it's really important to be specific about what you want so that you are not disappointed in the end, and so that you are speaking the same language as the editor that you are considering working with. It's important to understand the different services. So if I could start with developmental editing and then work my way with all the way to closer in increasing proximity to publication. I'll also, with developmental editing, explain how that's, it's also working in increasing invasiveness, if I can explain it that way. So an author will have a complete first draft and maybe have some questions around, character development or plot or structure. And so that's where a developmental editor can come in and help, especially also with pace and point of view. These are big elements that I consider global revisions. So you would be making changes throughout the manuscript. And that's why I called it a little more invasive. It's also more subjective as well. So it's called developmental editing, structural, content editing. There's all kinds of terms out there. And when you are vetting a professional, you'll want to speak their language, understand, what they are offering as far as a developmental edit or structural or content edit. And so when I am developmental editing, I am looking for those, identifying the problems and offering suggestions. And I do that through comments within the manuscript and a revision letter at the end to help tie together the examples and how to address those issues that I've found. But what you benefited from, Annie, I believe, is the manuscript evaluation, which is just a little bit less invasive as far as I'm not making any kinds of changes to your manuscript directly. It's more of that assessment and revision letter that says these are the main areas that you'll want to address. And it's great for seasoned authors. I have a few clients that when they switch genres or when they feel like they have it down after working with me on a developmental edit, will switch to a manuscript evaluation because they need some of the issues pointed out, but they don't necessarily need to be told how to fix them. Like once you've pointed out, hey, you've head hopped here or it's really slow here, then the authors know how to fix it on their own. And so you can save money with a manuscript evaluation. And then jumping to from after that, once you feel like you have your story, the structure solid, then it's time to look at maybe line editing if you're worried about smoothing transitions and flow. Again, it's a little subjective. And then once you turn to copy editing, which is more at the like punctuation and usage and grammar and spelling, then that's a little more by the book. You're following a style guide or referring to a dictionary. And then at the end, it's not really editing. It used to be, it's proofreading is more of like a comparison between your, the manuscript and the printed proof, and you're doing that final look before publication. But those in my mind are just a very simple, these are the stages of editing. And you'll want to be sure that when you're putting a call out there for, I need an editor, be specific. What do you need?
I agree with that because not everybody's it's not a one size fits all, like you said.
That's right.
Not everybody's going to need, maybe not the developmental edit. But I do think everybody does need the last proofreading.
Yeah.
That is very important.
It is, because this is a business. I mean, you should be treating your work as a business. You want to represent yourself as a professional and, catch as many flaws as you can.
Yep, exactly. So that leads me to my next question. Can you explain the most common errors you're seeing in that when writers give you a manuscript?
Absolutely. This is you'll have to slow me down or stop me if I go on and on, because it's funny. I think half of my posts and tweets are about what I see over and over again. So this is where the real value comes in. As far as structure, so whether you're following an outline or using methods like a hero's journey or beats, whatever your style is, you still need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so it's important in the beginning with that opening that you have a fantastic first line, that you really, really hook the reader to keep going. An intriguing introduction to your main character is essential. You want to give the basics of the time and place, like give the setting so that we kind of orient the reader for where they are. And then you must have some sort of build a foundation for the upcoming conflict. So whether it's like the big conflict, the theme of the book, or just something that maybe kind of refers to what would be coming up, it's important to have all of that in the opening. And then again, with structure, you want to avoid the saggy middle. You want to increase those complications, raise the stakes, challenge the main character so that you can show growth by the end. And then speaking of the end with resolutions, I think the common feedback I give about endings are, okay, you rushed it. You're trying to tie it up too tight, make it tidy, and tie it up too fast, and the reader's going to feel a little shortchanged. And you want to make it relevant. You don't want to just kind of ramble off into what happened here. And that happens when there's not an outline. That sometimes the resolution doesn't really reflect what we've built up to.
Yes.
And then you want to avoid introducing new characters or coincidences too close to the end. And if you are ending in a cliffhanger, prepare the reader for that. So it's understandable if you've got, a series planned, but you have to give some sort of satisfaction and still hook them for the next book.
Oh, that's great. I resonate with everything you just said.
Were you in your head where you're going, check?
Yeah. I was like, wait, did I do that? Because I just finished my editing my debut yesterday. So I'm excited and I'm like, yes, did I do all that? Gosh, there's so much that goes into it. You don't really realize it.
So many revisions.
Yeah. So my next question is, at what point in the writing process do you think a writer should contact an editor?
That's a great question. So when I would say depends on what type of editing you feel your book needs the most. So with developmental editing, I prefer that there's a completed first draft. So I do have some clients that I coach and help them get to that completed first draft. But I think in order to get the most value out of developmental editing, you need a completed first draft, preferably if you've put it in front of some friends and family, some beta readers in your target audience, or even better. That's, to make sure that you've got at least a complete picture to work with. And then once you feel that your revisions are solid, you've made the major changes, you're ready to move on, that's when I would say you want to connect with a copy editor. And it's important with the copy editing that you vet your potential editors that you may work with early, because I think most of the professionals, just speaking for myself, I book probably 6 to 8 weeks in advance. And so, sometimes authors shift projects around and I find myself with an opening and I can fill it with something immediate, but that's like, I feel like you're very lucky if you can unplanned snag an editor with very little notice. Mm-hmm. So I would say after your revisions are complete, or after your first draft is complete and you're working on the revisions, that's the time to be investigating, hey, who is the best fit for my book and for my personality, my style of expecting feedback. I do want to, could I jump back to the last one? I feel like I only gave structure tips and I totally want to give you some more. Okay. So other common feedback that I give about pace is, so don't start and end this every chapter the same way. So I think I see it in maybe some newer writers, more aspiring authors that will start a chapter with a wake up and then tuck the character into bed at the end. And if that's necessary for one scene or one chapter, fine, but don't do that over and over again. For point of view, I think the most important thing is maintaining consistency. For plot, you want to do some foreshadowing. You want to make sure that it makes sense. Like it's called vouchers, where something might seem insignificant in the beginning, but then towards the end it becomes, oh, that was critical and ties together nicely. You want to make sure your conflict is substantial enough to sustain throughout. So I see that a lot in romance, where you're trying to be too nice and you don't want to wreck the love interest and the relationship, so you go too easy on them. And readers really want to feel like the characters have overcome the challenges and they have worked hard for that ending. And I guess the last bit of feedback that I'd skipped over was for characters. I definitely know this one will resonate with you because you were concerned about it, but you nailed it. You got there. Readers will want to root for the main character, or at least one character. If you have, multiple points of view and they're all bad guys, it's going to be really hard for the reader to be invested and to care. So it's important to make sure that while you want flaws and for conflict and growth, you do want your character to have some sort of likability.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I had to go back and make my character likable because she's turning out to be a jerk. So I did go back and I was trying to make it funny, but I needed to make her a little bit nicer.
Soften it up here and there.
Yeah. The other thing that you said that I resonated with was putting your characters to sleep at the end of the chapters. And mm-hmm. I don't know if I did that so much in this current book, but
not that I recall.
Yeah, the prior book that I wrote, I did that a lot. And I was like, man, she goes to bed a lot. And yeah, but what I liked that you did with my manuscript is you're like, don't end a chapter so tidy all the time. And mm-hmm. I was doing that a lot. Where, okay, so you ended that so nicely. Now, why do I want to turn the page?
Right.
And I think that is such good advice. You always want to end so that people keep turning to read the next chapter.
That's right. You want those reviews to come in that say, you kept me up all night. And you do that with like uncertainty or a question or something at risk. Yeah. So it's okay to resolve, within the scene, the major conflict, but you need to tempt them with what's coming next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we move on to the next question?
Yes.
Okay. Do you ask, let's see okay. What are some tips you can give writers so they catch errors before handing the manuscript off to you?
Yes, excellent. So I am happy to share this because it helps me when I'm editing, and it also makes my job more pleasurable that I get a fairly clean manuscript to begin with. And you, as an author, can save money by doing some of these steps first. So most editors will charge by the hour. And so any cleanup that you can do on your own ahead of time is less hours that the editor is spending on things. Give them you clean up the simple things and give them the complex things to work through. So I would say my most favorite tip for kind of self-editing before working with a professional would be to read aloud. So you can read aloud your manuscript to yourself. You can read it to someone else. You can use words read aloud functionality. And what this will do, it will highlight awkward sentences, missed words. If you have words in there that were misspelled, and so it's going to pronounce it, and you're going to be like, that's not what I meant. So it catches a lot, and it's great. I use it. So I'll do when I do my editing passes, I will do a visual where I read and take notes, and I will do an audio where I listen to it. And then most of the time there's another pass in there that's like one's reading and just taking notes, and the next one's coming in and kind of offering suggestions and problem solving. Audio is the last one I do. Mm-hmm. And I can't stress it enough how many times it's saved me, because I'm like, oh my goodness, I missed that. Yes. Yes. And I'm so glad that I do it. Every time that I find something, I'm like, oh, it's so worth it to spend the time.
You know, it's so funny you say that, because this past week I had finished up my revisions, mm-hmm. and then I spent, I think it was 3 days, reading out loud my mm-hmm. manuscript. And I thought, okay, I was done with my revisions. Oh, this is great. I'm like, I think I caught everything. No way. You will not believe how many tabs I had, because when I was reading it out loud, I saw some double words. Like I said, make in this sentence, and then the next sentence I said, make again. And I don't like to repeat words. Right. After each other. Or I said cheer, and I'm like, she cheers a lot. Oh my God. You just catch all of these things that you don't realize when you're just you're not reading it out loud. I subscribe to that as reading it out loud. Now I tried to use it on my Microsoft, and I think it sounds kind of like a robot, right?
Oh yeah, it does. It definitely, it's not engaging. And so you have to pay attention. Like it's easy to, if you're going to multitask, then tune it out, and that doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
I vary the speed. So sometimes I'll let it go pretty fast, and sometimes I'll slow it down where I'm like really noodling on a section that is still rough. But I also think if you don't want to do the read aloud, you can do where you just change the format. So if you write and revise on the computer, print it out, and then read it to yourself and make your notes on paper and come back and make the changes on the computer. And then there's also, if you want to just stick with revisions on the computer, change the font and the size, because it'll shuffle around where the words fall on the page and trick your brain into thinking, okay, I'm reading something new. Because humans are just, we are sophisticated enough like that to know what's supposed to be on the page after we've already read it so many times. And we'll fill in, or we'll just automatically correct and not see those double words or the repetition. So yeah, those are some great self-editing tips before working with a professional.
Okay, great. Do you ask the writer to provide you with an outline or synopsis, or do you go in blindly and just start reading?
Both, unfortunately. I love to ask, though. I ask every time. Sometimes I'm lucky and I will get an outline, a synopsis. I've received one author I worked with. She had like her whole a binder of like what had inspired the book and the plot and the whole. This is like my character sheets and what they look like and what they act like. And so the more that you have, the better. It's fantastic. And what I will do is I will use those tools to, as a guide of this is what we intended when we set out to write, and then compare that to, what is the final manuscript, and is there anywhere that, it kind of strayed, and it's okay. I mean, it's great to write an outline and still veer from that when inspiration strikes, but it is helpful to have those tools, especially with developmental editing. Now with copy editing, I will ask from authors and publishers for a style sheet. And this is just, it'll contain, some of those, the characters and the places and the words, like the style choices as far as internal thoughts should be in italics, or are we using spaces around the M dash or not? And like, so all that nitty gritty stuff we'll put for consistency purposes in a style sheet. And if that's not provided, then I usually create one.
Okay, that's good to know. I know there's a lot of talk of writers who are plotters and pantsters. And so I think pantsters are a little bit more leery to be like, oh gosh, I have to provide an outline now. And actually I'm a little bit of both. I have like a rough outline, but now I'm starting to do detailed outlines. It's making the process so much easier for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see and that's one of the things when I do author interviews, is one of the questions I love to ask is, okay, so how do you do this? It's yes, what was your inspiration? And then how did you execute on it? Because it really is interesting how varied it can be.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's no standard for writing your manuscript either.
Not at all.
Okay, why do you think writers need an editor?
Oh, this is such a good question. So as I mentioned just a little bit ago, your brain is just trained to see what should be there. And you're so close to it, from a developmental standpoint, you're so close to the story that it's hard to see, and sometimes attached to the words, it's hard to see what's not working for flow, or which transitions are rough. So from a developmental standpoint, I think it's a matter of, seeing is it the forest for the trees, or whichever? I always get the cliches messed up, but but it's hard to see and detach from the story. And then from a copy editing standpoint, like I said, that you're already expecting and correcting, and so you need fresh eyes, and that's what an editor can provide. And now the difference between just your neighbor who was an English teacher and her fresh eyes versus an editor is that we have a lot of tools and macros, and we've been doing it over and over for different books so much that we're fast at it. So we're fast and thorough, and just there with a professional, there's such a difference in the degree. And I will say that every level, like, use them all to your advantage. So yes, have the neighbor read if they want to read your manuscript, but still work with a professional to make sure that in the end you're putting out a quality product.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I agree with you. So what can a writer expect from an editor?
Great question. So I can only speak for myself and what I provide, but I would hope that other editors are doing this as well. This is a business. And so my very first thing is professionalism. And that means diplomacy in the feedback. I offer constructive criticism and praise, because I think it's helpful to see what's working well also, to be like, oh, you really hooked me here, or this was a great mirror image from the start of the book to the end. Like it helps to show which tactics or writing devices you're implementing correctly so that you do it in future books. And so it's a mixture. It's praise and constructive criticism, and not just identifying the problems, but also offering the solutions. Affordability, naturally, I think there are the range is out there. Not everyone can afford multiple passes, like to work with a developmental editor and a copy editor and a proofreader. But I think if you are researching your editors and you're looking at, does this editor have ranges that fall within what the Editorial Freelancers Association, Editorial Freelancers of America suggests? If they were within the industry range, then you can at least have that first step to being assured that it's a professional you'll be working with, and they should be within that affordability based on your word count and the state of the manuscript. So what else to look for and what to expect? So definitely professionalism. I would say also some training, some experience. Look at, not just a professional website, but also the tone and the vibe of interactions. And if you get references from other authors who have used that editor, ask those questions about, how was it to work with them? Were they, how responsive were they to your questions and to getting feedback to you, and just, yeah.
What I liked about your editing style was you were very constructive, which is very important to me. And also because I really want to improve, but I also loved where you pointed out things that resonated with you, and like, oh, I laughed at this part, or, are you spying on me? Because it's very helpful to the writer to know how the reader is reacting as the editor is reading it, rather than just, I would change this comma, or I would switch this sentence around. It's very helpful to know that the writer is, okay, oh, she got engaged at this part. Well, maybe I need to put more of that type of engagement later on in the manuscript or whatever. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it's very important to understand where it's working well also, so that you don't edit that out. So when you're making your revisions, you don't lose something that was so very engaging.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think that's all the questions I had. Do we have any questions?
We do, lots of. So let's get to some of these readers here, some of these followers. So what's the first thing an author should do when beginning to edit a manuscript? This is awesome. So I don't know how many manuscripts I've received that have errors in them that spell check could have fixed, but I would suggest as a very first step is to please use spell check. I have done lots of beta reading too, where it's okay that there's inconsistencies. I kind of love, that's kind of like a puzzle to solve, is finding timeline or inconsistencies in character descriptions. That's fun. But it's very hard to get through a manuscript that has spelling errors that could have easily been avoided. It really takes away from the pleasure of. And I mean, that's why I edit. I love to read. I love this job very much, but I certainly like it when it isn't a chore. Okay. All right. So we have what makes my editing service unique? That is a great question. I'll have to give that one some thought. Let me come back to that. When you're a best-selling author later, you're gonna have a handsome English gentleman read your manuscript to you while you rise. I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
I actually can't wait to read your book, Annie, to see when it's complete, and never mind hold it in my hand and be like, yes, but see what changes. Because I know that it's come such a long way. And
I mean, I feel like it's never ending. There's always going to be, until it is in print, there's always going to be edits. You can always find something. I mean, and it's not like grammatical stuff, or structure. It's maybe the story changed a little bit here or there. So until it's in print, it's not finished.
But way to persevere, because it really is, I know it's a long process, especially as for those that self-publish, maybe the process isn't quite as long, but it's still a lot longer than people expect. There are some that can write a story very fast, but are shocked at the publication process. Like, it's not that fast. It's not that simple. So
it isn't.
So another one here is, what sources do I recommend? So I love Merriam-Webster and the Chicago Manual Style. Now, these are perfect because I do primarily fiction editing. I do a little bit of, for some small publishers, like creative nonfiction. But for the most part, I stick with Chicago and I stick with Merriam-Webster. I also, like, kind of off the cuff, have recently adopted Kia Thomas's A Very Sweary Dictionary, because some of my books have swear words that don't appear in Merriam-Webster. So that's been helpful too.
Well, yeah, you have to get those swear words correctly spelled.
That's right. And it matters whether something should be hyphenated or not.
That's funny. All right.
Okay, so back to that question about what makes my editing service unique. I would like to think that I am providing a very professional, fast, and thorough service. So whether that is with developmental or copy editing, I mean, I do some proofreading too, but that's not primarily what I focus on. I am putting in the time to do the multiple rounds. I am not just using software. As I said, I do multiple reads manually myself. I do put it through macros to find the little, extra spaces, or, sometimes after a period, that old habit to die hard of hitting 2 spaces. Yeah. But yeah, I will do, I would say thoroughness. So I care. I have got my book babies that I have worked on that I am very proud to display and show off and hand to friends and family and be like, hey, look what my little piece did to help this really awesome author get the job done and get the book out there. So I'd like to say it's the passion that I bring to it, but I'm sure that there are many others. It's a huge pool of people out there that feel the same way I do about words and books. So as long as you do your due diligence to find that right fit, you should be pretty good.
Yeah, I'll have to second that about you are quick, but you're very thorough. And that's important because you don't want an editor who's quick and then they miss a whole slew of things. Yeah. So, and I think you have a deal going on right now.
I do. Thanks for remembering. Yes. So I was too quick and I finished up. So I had my brother, this is a long story. My brother got married in April. And so I was worried about the workload that I had planned in May when I got back after taking a week off. But I didn't have anything to worry about because I think 2 of my May projects pushed into July. Mm-hmm. And so then I took on some other smaller projects, but I found myself in June with a hole, and I don't like sitting around with nothing to do. And so I did put a summer sale out there that is offering 25% off, which is huge. I mean, that's when you do a percentage like that, that's pretty big. Yeah. And then there are other ones out there that are specific to developmental editing or to copy editing. So reach out to, and let me let people know how to get a hold of me, but to take advantage of those. So some of the tips that I talked about today are at revisiondivision.com tips, because I didn't want to call it a blog. When I first started, I'm like, who am I to have a blog? But if you go to Revision Division and there's a contact form, by filling that out, we can start the process to look at what kind of editing you need, and we can apply those promos that I've got going on. I'd love to work with you.
Oh, good. I don't think we have any more questions.
No, I think we may have addressed them, but let's make sure people know how to get a hold of you as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And This will be posted I will post it on my website too, so people can go back and watch if they want or listen to. So.
Yeah, if there was anybody that saw our posts about the upcoming live Q&A and couldn't make it, the recording will be posted.
Yeah. So, well, gosh, thank you so much. This was so fun. I think we have to do more of these.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think someone was just tweeting about how they needed some marketing tips, and I said, that's not my area, but Annie knows.
Yeah, well, we can put something together.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.